Welcome, and thank you for joining us. I'm Shirley Gertin with Canadians for Homeopathy, and today I'd like to tell you a short story from the life of Samuel Hahnemann, a story that begins not with homeopathy, but with a lecture that no one expected. In 1811, at the University of Leipzig, a controversial physician was to give a lecture. Many expected a ranting medical rebellion. What they got instead was a master class in classical scholarship. The man they had invited was Samuel Hahnemann, already known for sharply criticizing the medicine of his day: bloodletting, massive drug doses, and treatments that often harmed patients much more than they helped. Many in the audience expected a fiery speech. But to understand why Hahnemann was standing there that day, we need to step back for a moment. By the time he arrived in Leipzig, Hahnemann was 56 years old and had already spent more than 20 years developing the ideas that would become homeopathy. Those years had not been easy. Hahnemann and his wife Johanna had 11 children, and for many years the family moved from town to town across Saxony while he tried to support the household and continue his research. 20 moves in 20 years. And travel in those days was slow and rough. And moving meant loading an entire household into a carriage and setting off over poor roads, often in bad weather, not knowing what work would be waiting at the other end. And somewhere in that carriage were 11 children, a worried wife, and a physician who refused to travel without his books and his medicine bottles. On one of these journeys, the family carriage overturned in a serious accident. A daughter suffered a broken leg. One of the boys injured his spine, a deformity that affected him for the rest of his life, and the baby died. These were not comfortable academic years, but years of real hardship and uncertainty for Hahnemann's family. But in 1811, there was another reason to move. Napoleon's armies were moving across Saxony, and the town of Torgau, where the family was living, was heavily fortified and becoming unsafe. So Hahnemann moved his family to Leipzig, hoping for safety, stability, and the opportunity to teach while continuing his research. He applied for a position, but universities had rules. Anyone wishing to lecture had to present and defend a scholarly thesis in Latin in a public academic forum, and this was the lecture that everyone had gathered to hear. Given Hahnemann's reputation, many expected an attack on conventional medicine. They received instead a long, detailed lecture on a plant, hellebore. No ranting, no fireworks, just a long, detailed paper about the use of hellebore by the ancients. He delivered the lecture in perfect Latin, and throughout the lecture, he quoted ancient authorities in their original languages, drawing on sources in 8 different languages, including Hebrew and Arabic. If anyone had expected a rebel, they instead encountered a formidable classical scholar. The faculty could not deny his qualifications, and he got the job. So at the age of 56, Hahnemann was accepted as a lecturer at the University of Leipzig. But once he began lecturing regularly, his subject quickly turned to one thing: the failures of conventional medicine and the new system he had been developing for decades, homeopathy. Accounts from students say that when he spoke about the medicine of the day, his calm would vanish, and he could become, in one description, a raging hurricane. But the lecture that had first brought him to Leipzig had been very different. The lecture on hellebore earned him the right to teach, and the work that followed would carry his ideas far beyond Leipzig. For more than 200 years later, those ideas are still being studied, debated, and used around the world. Not a bad outcome for a lecture that wasn't supposed to change the world. The end. So if you would like to learn more about homeopathy, history, or upcoming talks and courses, please visit Canadians for Homeopathy, and thank you for listening.